Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, Vincent LaRusso and I are going to get together to discuss the legacy of Ozzy Osbourne. It was announced today that he passed away at the age of 76. Our condolences to Sharon, his kids, his fans, his family, and everybody around the world who's impacted by his loss. Ozzy, thank you so much for the memories. All right, let's jump in and let's get started with our remembrance of Ozzy Osbourne. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today, unfortunately, I have back with me my friend, my buddy,
What do you
my
mean,
comrade.
unfortunately,
Not
with me?
unfortunately for you, but unfortunate for the reason why we're back together
Uh,
so soon and
I
so
thought you were saying
quick.
unfortunate that you have me back.
No, no, definitely never unfortunate that you're here. I might
Okay,
bust your
sorry.
chops that it's unfortunate that you're here, but never unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we're gathering again so quickly after having just done one of these episodes. And well, we haven't done one like this in remembrance of somebody, thankfully, in a long time. Although this one, I'm going to say, shocked me is the best way for me to say it. Obviously, as we've probably all heard at this point, it was just announced in the last less than an hour ago that Ozzy Osbourne passed away at the age of 76. Clearly, we all know Ozzy was sick, Parkinson's, other things, and wasn't doing so great. But for me, it came as a total shock. I mean, he just performed 3 weeks ago and looked so happy and so excited to be back on stage for one last time. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, he's no longer with us. My son was the one that called me. He's like, "Hey, did you hear Ozzy died?" I'm like, "No, no, he didn't die. He's like, it's on the internet." I'm like, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet." As soon as I Googled it, I'm like, "Holy crap, no, this is true." And I texted you and you were like,
Could you
"What?"
can you do a reenactment of you Googling it on the phone?
No, I can't. I don't think I was like dee 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 dee. Like, I was like into like total like shock and
Yeah.
stunned. Like, no, there's no way that this is true. Um, and then I texted you, and you were instantly like, "What?" I think I assume my text is how you found out as well.
Yeah, no, I have yeah. I wasn't looking on social media or anything
Hmm.
like that at that time. So
Yeah,
but
yeah.
now looking, now you see it's all over the place.
It is. Yep, yep. And I've even seen like some musicians, and we're doing this in Ozzy. It's only announced an hour ago that he passed away, and I'm already seeing Vinny Appice has posted something, and Michael Sweet's posted something, and Wolf Van Halen's posted. I'm sure there's plenty of others that I haven't even seen yet, but you can just see the outpouring of love already coming in from the musicians around the world who were impacted by this. And I'm going to say, for me, when I heard this news, besides being shocked about it, from a musician and somebody who I don't know point of view, already I could feel like it's only an hour. But this one's hitting me. I mean, for me, Ozzy was the second artist I ever got into. For me, there was Kiss, and then second was Ozzy Osbourne. And Ozzy was for
Was that
me
you forgot about Rupert Holmes? You can,
Rupert Holmes doesn't count. Rupert Holmes doesn't count as a hard rock guy, but Ozzy was for me a gateway into some of these other hard rock bands, whether it's Motley Crue, who I got into from going to see Ozzy, um, Rat, because I was recording the Rock Palace that Ozzy was going to be on in 1984, and Rat was on that show also. So Ozzy was a gateway for me into many of the bands I listened to in the 80s. When did you first get into Ozzy? Do you recall?
that's a great question. Um, I was very aware of the song Iron Man as a youngster,
Mm.
pre double digits, pre
Okay.
double digits before I was
Hmm.
even 10 years old because my dad had and I think I talked about this once, it was called Heavy Metal. It was a compilation record that may have come out in 73, I want to say. It was like a Warner Special Project, products, double album. And it had Iron Man on it, along with some other songs that really were not heavy metal. That's what was kind of ironic. But
Hmm.
yeah, check it out. Look it up. It's quite an interesting compilation album, and it had Iron Man on there. So that was kind of like my first, you know, um, understanding of like who he was. Because
Now,
he
when
do
when
some.
you heard that though, I'm assuming you didn't know the members of the band. You just knew the song and knew the band Black Sabbath.
Yeah, definitely. And to pinpoint a date of when I just like knew who Ozzy was, that'd be hard for me in
Hmm.
my memory or recollection. But what I can tell you was, certainly when I started getting into the interest of doing music and playing music, um, I really got to discover who Ozzy was. And of course, you knew what Paranoid. I knew the song Paranoid. It's not like, even as a teenager, like I had, but to recall when that was, it's really hard to date back.
Hmm.
But um, certainly, um, knowing Ozzy was from when I really started getting interest in playing music, playing the drums and stuff like that. And as a matter of fact, a couple of the first covers, everybody learned Crazy Train. It was like, I don't know, Mr. Crowley. I mean, that was like, your gateway into like doing covers in the 90s, not 90s, in
80s.
the
Mhm.
80s. And that or Ain't Talking About Love was everybody was playing those songs. So
Yes.
that's when I really, and then from you, when we always talk about the stories, how we kind of reconnected after that short period of time when we went to separate schools. I remember, seeing you have the Bark of the Moon album because I really didn't know that record. And since you were so heavily into Ozzy, listening it at your house, and that's kind of how I really got to know who Ozzy. And then I remember you had, the various Black Sabbath records.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I know I got into Ozzy. It must have been late 81 or early 82 time period because somebody made me a BASF cassette. It was red. I still have it somewhere in the house and it said on it, Ozzy Ozzy, not Ozzy Osbourne, Ozzy Ozzy. That's what he hand wrote on it. And it was the first two albums, basically. He recorded the tape for me as a quote unquote mixed tape, but it was just songs from the first two albums in random order. And so I knew those two albums, certainly, I'll say back and forth. And Bark at the Moon was not out yet. So that was late 81, early 82 time period, I guess, of when I got that cassette. And at that time, the only artist, the only band I really listened to in the rock world was Kiss. I really knew no other rock bands. And Ozzy was like, I was like, this is friggin' amazing stuff. Crazy Train. Now, I did know the song Paranoid because I had like you just said you had like a compilation record. I had this, I think it's called Superstars of the 70s. And it was like four albums and it had The Doors and it had America and it had the song Paranoid from Black Sabbath. But I
Was this
could
was this a K-Tel product?
I
Remember?
don't think so. I don't think it was a K-Tel. It was a four
Because
album
that
set.
usually was, yeah, yeah. Usually they weren't four albums, so that's why I
Yeah.
was
No,
curious.
this was a four album set and Paranoid was on there, but I would be lying if I say, well, I knew Ozzy was the lead singer of Black Sabbath. I definitely
Hmm.
didn't know that. So when I got these Ozzy songs on tape, I was certainly very, very interested, very intrigued, and that really like opened up the floodgate to me becoming a fan of hard rock and heavy metal. I remember buying my first Black Sabbath album, which turned out to be Mob Rules unbeknownst to me that it wasn't Ozzy on the
Hmm.
album. And then I got the album home. And I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't sound like this guy that's on Crazy Train and I don't know. And so it was kind of funny how that worked out to me. And I still love that Sabbath album, but obviously Ozzy was not on it. But that's how I'll say oblivious I was to Black Sabbath at that moment.
So yeah, it is a Superstars of the 70s. I see it here.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's got everything from Alice Cooper to Seals Across to the Beach
Yes.
Boys to it's Judy
I
Collins, and it's
think
kind
if
of
I
a
remember right, and it's been decades since I played this, but I think the first song on the first side was School's Out, if I remember right.
yes.
Yeah, you
And
said.
then School's Out right into Summer Breeze.
Yeah,
Smooth,
exactly. It's like,
smooth,
right.
smooth.
Yeah, yeah, but that was my introduction. But yeah, I got really, really big into Ozzy in the early 80s. And in fact, my second concert ever, I'd seen Kiss at the Garden in 1979. And then my second concert ever was Ozzy, Bark the Moon Tour at the Nassau Coliseum in 1984. And that's where I got introduced that evening to Motley Crue, and opened up those floodgates. But I was so excited for that Ozzy concert. I was seventh row from the stage, took pictures. I still have them to this day. Took pictures from, my seat in the seventh row. Man, I was on like freaking cloud nine. And for me, like when I think Ozzy, that's I think is like literally, like I said, my gateway into hard rock and heavy metal bands and all of that. I saw Ozzy. Did you ever see Ozzy solo in concert?
Not solo. I saw him with the Black Sabbath when they
Okay.
did that tour. When what, like
2013?
2013? Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw him
yeah,
on that tour.
yeah. I saw that tour also. I don't know why you didn't come with me. I saw Ozzy again in 2010. at Madison Square Garden. I was with a whole bunch of people. I was with like 8 or 10 people. So I don't know why you didn't get the invite, or maybe you had something that night or whatever. But I remember that show at the Garden in 2010. It was December of 2010, if I remember right. He played 2 hours, and I hadn't seen him in 15 years perform. What a freaking great show! I remember him doing Killer of Giants that night, and me being totally thrilled because that's a song I happen to like on the Ultimate Sin album quite a bit, and it's just a song and a performance that sticks out in my mind. So yeah, to me this one hits hard. I mean, I just and we did a podcast on this, I guess 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, whatever it was. I met Ozzy a year and a half ago. My son and I at a meet and greet here in New Jersey. And my son had asked him, "Hey, you think you'll ever get back on stage again?" And Ozzy's eyes lit up, and he's like, "I'm gonna get on stage if it's the last thing I ever do. They're gonna have to drag me off of there. I'm gonna perform until the day I die." And well, boy, that's almost literally what happens, right? I mean, it's amazing to think that it was only 3 weeks ago that that final Ozzy Sabbath concert took place, and now here it is 3 weeks later. He's no longer with us. I mean, I would have never dreamt. I know obviously he was not well and he was confined to a chair that night. But 3 weeks ago, if you would have told me, hey, Ozzy's got 21 days to live or less, I would have thought you were crazy.
Yeah,
Never.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
as far as I can remember reading, I thought that they was like, oh, he's gonna perhaps come out with another album or
Yeah.
continue to record. And well, so
Of course, it begs
maybe
the question, is there anything that he's already done that's in the can? Not that I want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but it'll be interesting to see if any of those songs that he was going to work on are actually completed yet. Who knows?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We
yeah,
talk about debut albums sometimes on here, and we've spoke about Appetite for Destruction, and we've spoke about the first Van Halen album. We've spoke about the first Kiss album. It's not a true debut in the sense that Ozzy obviously was already an established artist, but goddamn Blizzard of Oz as his first solo album, in my mind, that's probably one of the greatest albums of all time in terms
yeah.
of hard rock, And I think we did an episode on that album once also, if I remember.
Yes, we did.
No,
Yes.
and just
Listen, you
go ahead, you
you
first.
you can't what's the words I'm trying to use here? The significance of what he brought to not just hard rock, heavy metal, just the music in general. I mean, Ozzy's one of those guys. You hear his voice. There's no only one.
Yeah, sure.
There's only one. And the fact of the matter, people debate, where heavy metal comes from. I think everybody, you know, will say Black Sabbath, although people argue there are a couple other bands. I could have this wrong. Cactus, which is one of the Carmine a piece
Hmm.
or Apathy.
Hmm.
They were you could argue that up, but that the doom music that
Yes.
I mean, there's only one band that really had that sound, and and the influence that Ozzy had musically, personality wise. We know the legendary stories. We've seen the movie The Dirt with the Motley Crue and snorting the ants or whatever the hell
Hmm.
he did. I mean,
Crazy.
Ozzy lived his life Ozzy's way. He's kind of like a lot like Lemmy in Motorhead.
Hmm.
He wasn't going to make any sort of compromises or whatever. He was going to drink until the end. I'm not saying that Ozzy did that. That's not what I'm
No.
saying. But we know that Ozzy led I don't want to say rough life or whatever you want to say. But fact of the matter is, what he's 76. He's past that.
Yeah. Yep.
A lot of people
76.
don't even make it that far, considering the
No.
life he.
Well, and
And
that's one of the things my wife said to me when I said, "Oh, did you hear Ozzy Pish?" She said, "Wasn't he young?" I was like, "76." I said, "But he might as well have been 376 with the way he abused his
not a
body and
normal
lived his
seven,
life.
not
He's not a
not a,
normal 76." And look,
no,
God bless him. He lived. You said it perfectly. He lived his life his way, no compromises till the very end.
yeah, yeah, and he's just one of those guys that, again, I mean, you can debate, like a McCartney. There's only like one McCartney. I
Hmm.
always call McCartney's not human. But the Beatles and McCartney and Lennon, I'll include the whole Beatles, but particularly for me, Paul McCartney, the influence down of how many. Well, when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I knew what I wanted to do. If you had a nickel for every time you heard,
Yep.
you'd be $100 richer. You know what I mean? For almost everybody is, universally said that. I think even Gene Simmons has said it. I think even Paul Stanley has said it.
Yep.
Um, but again, Ozzy is just one of those guys that, I never heard any musician talk badly about it. But even Zach Wild was saying that, more so recently, I saw him do, I think it was with, maybe it was the Billy Corgan
Hmm.
interview. He was saying like, he was like his drinking buddy and whatever, and,
Yep. Who was it?
stuff like that. And he was like, almost like a father figure to him, and he idolized him,
Yep.
and how much respect he had for him and still has. You know, I tend to think that, some other guys like a Jakey Lee or someone like that, you know, obviously that was business related, more to do with Sharon than with Ozzy, those
Yep.
type of things. And we've heard of stories where Ozzy had a falling out, and Carmine, I think a piece was in the band for you, and then something
Hmm.
happened and whatever. I think a lot of those things were more motivated by, management and such. I
Yep.
think, Ozzy was just such a beloved character, and character's a good,
Character's a very good word.
you
Yes.
know, I
Hmm.
mean, could you imagine hanging out with Ozzy? And then you got like, of course, in what was it, the 2000s with the Osbournes, you
The
got like,
Osmonds.
a taste of, the whole Ozzyisms, which
Hmm.
is, so
And I'll pause you there for a moment because you brought up the impact Ozzy has on music, obviously, right? That can never be understated or overstated, whichever way that's supposed to go. Um, but even his impact on reality TV and musicians, right? So after Ozzy's success, you had Bret Michaels doing a show. Of course, Gene Simmons did a show. I mean, it became a norm after Ozzy opened up his door, if you will, to what was it, VH1 and doing the Osbournes. It
mhm.
became much more accepted. And I remember at first when the Osbournes was going on TV, I was like, no, no, I don't want to see behind the curtain of the Prince of Darkness. But damn, the episodes I watched, he was funny. He's a, like you said before, he's a freaking character. And he even had an impact in my mind to me on some of that type of TV, which is just crazy because look, one of the knocks against Ozzy over the years is that, well, Ozzy doesn't write music and Ozzy doesn't really write the lyrics. Of course, we've heard him, the fact that he writes the melodies and usually then somebody else comes in and writes the lyrics. But you said before that his voice is so unique. And look, his solo albums would never have been as successful as they were without Randy Rhoads, without Bob Daisley, without Jakey Lee, without Zach Wild. But if those guys wrote those same songs and it was somebody other than Ozzy singing them, I also don't think those songs would have been anywhere near as popular. It's just my opinion, right? I mean, Ozzy just brought something to the table that, in my mind, really no other singer or artist really did over all those decades. It's just freaking amazing.
And this is something to debate. Nobody looked better barefoot in any music video than Ozzy.
Oh, what was that shot in the dark in the video? He was barefoot and wearing like a
Was
yellow
it?
and black robe of sorts or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Or sequence,
Sequence,
sparkle.
yeah, not a robe, yeah,
Or was it lightning strikes? Maybe it was
oh,
lightning
maybe it's Lightning
strikes.
Day. It was one of it's that era, it's the
That was
ultimate sin
that
era.
was the Ozzy barefoot era.
The
Yeah,
barefoot era. That's right.
I can just imagine him showing Ozzy. You don't need your shoes. No, no, no. Really, you could take them off. Video director. No, no. Yeah, your socks too. You could be barefoot.
Yes, that was the
But
only
well,
album cycle I could think of he was barefoot.
and again, listen. Not only unique voice. I mean, that stage pressing, that pacing that he would do,
Yes.
left, right. That left, right, and then the
The
infamous,
hand clap that we always love to do that.
I mean,
Um,
it was so unique,
yeah. And
really.
I just always I still get chills. I was listening to one of his a bootleg of one of his concerts a few weeks ago and him starting the concert, "Let the madness begin." I just like I hear those words and I instantly get chills. To me, it's in some ways it's better than like you wanted the best, you got the best. There's something about that "Let the madness begin" just sums up a feeling of being at an Ozzy concert perfectly to me. Yeah. I
Yeah,
just love
yeah.
that. And of course, look, obviously so many people also when they hear Ozzy, they think of the biting the heads off of bats and doves. It's just when you think about the stories behind this man and pissing on the Alamo, it's just freaking I mean, think about it. Who else could do all of those things and then become as beloved as Ozzy was in the last 20 years? It's freaking amazing, right?
It's true. It really is true. Yeah, I mean, look, again, we've talked about this more so recently. I've talked to friends about this, where you and I are both at this age where, it's us plus 20,
Yep.
because like,
Mhm.
figure you had 20 years to when we were younger, we were listening to, and it's unfortunate, I just saw it. I think McCartney celebrated his 82nd or 83rd birthday.
Hmm.
And again, I was thinking like, wow, I hate to say it, but how much longer do we have this guy,
Sure.
And you can debate, oh, he sounds weird singing. And I think I was talking to you the other day, and I was talking about Paul Simon. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
me personally, I don't want to see these, my heroes live like that anymore.
Yeah.
I want to remember them. That doesn't mean I want them to disappear. That's not what I'm saying,
No, no, of
but
course, right.
for me to, pay, sometimes I go back and forth, because then like my point being is like if someone like Ozzy passes away and I say, I had the opportunity however many years ago he was touring as a soloist, maybe I should have gone,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
I
Especially if
start thinking
you
about
haven't seen him. And that's why for me, I'm so glad. And we spoke about it. We did an episode on that show he did 3 weeks ago. And no, Ozzy did not sound like he did in 1982 or 3 or 84. But I knew, having met him a couple of years ago, how important it was for him to get back on that stage again, right? I saw his eyes light up talking about it. So many people criticize, oh, Sharon dragged him on stage. No, if you would have met Ozzy and been in the room with him and asked him the question like my son did and saw his face light up, you knew where Ozzy's head and heart was. He wanted to be on stage again. And I'm glad he got that opportunity one last time. 5 of his own songs, 4 Sabbath songs. God, this would have been, it's bad enough. It would have been even worse if this happened like 3 days before that concert or something like that. I'm so
yeah,
glad I saw firsthand how important that was to Ozzy to get on stage again. And I'm so glad he got to do that one more time and pass with peace of knowing I did it one more time. I went out my way. I didn't let all of these sicknesses get me from ever being on stage again. I did it one last time. And I'm sure the guys in Sabbath also feel a
of
sense
course.
of happiness that they had closure with that also. Not happiness that Ozzy passed, obviously, but happiness that they as a band had the proper closure.
And maybe Jakey Lee, I'm sure everybody. I mean, because I think certainly, yeah. I mean, it was talk about timing of this. I mean, it's just really
It's
incredible. I mean,
uncanny.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
unbelievable how the timing of it.
yeah,
When
yeah.
you think of Ozzy, do you think of him more as a solo artist or as a member of Sabbath? Right? Because there's no
That
wrong
is a
answer to this.
that is a great question. It's like his name is such a brand name alone.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it's almost like what's stronger, the name Black Sabbath as an entity or Ozzy Osbourne? It's not even an argument that in the last, 40 years that Ozzy's name is stronger as far as putting out records and success, way
Mhm.
more than Black Sabbath. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, it's not even close. I mean, if you think of it, arguably, after Mob Rules, was that Born Again after Mob Rules?
Yeah,
I'm
I think
trying to
so.
remember.
I think so. Yeah.
Right? And then anything forward from that was really kind of lukewarm success for Black
Hmm.
Sabbath. And they tried different singers and, different lineups. Um, and Ozzy, from that Blizzard of Oz record and forward, really didn't have any duds. I mean, you could argue what album you like better or worse.
Of
Oh,
course. Yeah.
Ultimate Sin. Oh, they started with keyboard. Well, it's the era of the music. I mean,
Hmm.
and it was still a successful album
Yeah.
and tour and whatnot. And then the never, I should say never ending, but all right, who's going to be the next guitar player? And him always like, oh, Ozzy always finds the guy,
Hmm.
and then Zach Wild comes in and then kind of reinvigorates the machine again,
Yeah.
and they highly successful with him, and it's really an interesting journey. I mean, how many artists first of all come for a band? We've talked about this before, and then as successful or even more, maybe. I'm not
Hmm.
saying the pioneer. I'm saying as successful or more, right?
Yeah.
And then how many bands or artists, solo artists, lose a guy like a Randy Rhodes and then replaces him with one, and then two,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
three. I mean, how many times? I mean, I can't
I
really
mean,
off the
like
top
you
of
were
my
saying
head.
before, the impact he has on the music industry, he's even had that impact on some musicians. I mean, with all due respect, I don't know if we know who Jakey Lee or Zach Wild is without them being the guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne.
That's You're
You know,
absolutely right on that.
you know,
You're
and
absolutely right.
and it's crazy if you think back to 1978, 79, Ozzy's leaving Black Sabbath. If you would have bet money at that point, your money probably would have been on Sabbath being the more successful entity going forward, and Ozzy may potentially never be heard of
Hmm.
again. I mean,
That's a
at that time, people didn't expect much from Ozzy as a solo artist at all.
that, true, true. I agree. And hindsight is whatever 50-50 because
Hmm.
when you hear Black Sabbath, yes, you hear the riffs, but you also hear that voice.
Yes.
It's like the same voice for both. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Yes, the music evolved, it changed, but
And that's not to diminish
that
what Dio did with Sabbath, right? Because I love those albums. But like you said, after those two albums with
you
Dio,
know,
things went downhill and went downhill pretty fast.
it's so funny you say about Dio and just off to, because you mentioned it, I'm just going to mention because he was a part, and I don't want to get away from this
Hmm.
this podcast is about Ozzy, but the other day I was watching there's a couple of guys I watch, reaction videos. I enjoy some of
Hmm.
those things, and I especially like these guys. They're called Lost in Vegas. They're like hip hop guys, but I saw they were listening to like Rat and Dio and heavy metal stuff and even some Rush. And it's always fascinating when I see like hip hop guys, they're getting into it and like this is making my playlist. And
Hmm.
anyway, my point being is that they were doing, I think, like Holy Diver and Rainbow in the Dark. And I was listening to Dio and I'm like, is there any greater heavy metal voice than this
Hmm.
guy's voice? I'm talking about the prototypical. I mean, I'm not, and again, this is not Ozzy's got a very unique and he's obvious type, but that guttural Dio voice is so underrated in my point. I
It
just
is.
like it makes you go back and say, wow, I got to get back and listen to this music again because this guy. I know, listen, he's respected, but I don't know if he got the kind of credit. And to your point, what he brought into Black Sabbath because they were never the same
No,
after him.
no,
I
they
mean,
weren't.
again, they replaced Ozzy and they got Dio, which was like, wow,
Hmm.
like you
But
found
even with
somebody.
bringing in
Yeah,
Dio, they still didn't reach the same level of success
no,
that they had with Ozzy,
no,
And that's where you
no,
could talk about Dio being a better singer vocally, and certainly I don't think anybody would argue that. But again, I think there's just something Ozzy brought to the table that was so unique, even in that situation where they replace him with arguably somebody with a better voice,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and it's just you can't live up to that same level of success that Ozzy. So let me ask you this question. Ozzy Osbourne, one song that's not called Crazy Train. What do you choose? Sabbath or
I,
solo?
I think this is easy. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, think about it. When you put that album on, what do you hear?
Yeah, it's the first song. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I get chills just doing that.
Yeah.
It's just
Hmm.
like, I mean, and then, his voice comes in and it's such an, when he comes in, people look at me and say, what
Hmm.
is the lyric?
Is
Is it
the end
you or
near?
me or
When is the final
the
day? Which
final day?
is kind of sad to
It's,
think right now, but
yeah, I mean, but just the way that comes in, it's just, man, I just never forget as a kid first hearing that and
hmm.
being so influenced by that record. And also, as you remember, I mean, it was a huge deal when Tribute was going to come
Yes.
out. It was like,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, this is before internet. Remember how we were like, couldn't wait for this thing? We had
Yes.
heard it was going to come out, and
Yeah.
you got it. I remember when you got it and you brought it
Hmm.
home as you always would do. We sat around and we listened to it,
Hmm.
over and over again, and I was just like blown. And even recently, I had said to somebody, I said, as great as Blizzard of Oz is, go back and listen to the versions of like Crazy Train on. I mean, because Crazy Train has got that whole intro solo.
Hmm.
I mean, that album is killer,
Hmm.
song after song. I don't care if it's overdub. I don't care, whatever it is. You know, it's. I mean, you want to talk about like a perfect live album.
It
It's
is great.
amongst the best. You people talk about Kiss Alive,
Mhm.
Frampton Comes Alive.
Hmm.
That tribute record is to me,
It's been a few years. I'll have to
sonically,
maybe that's what I will
uh,
listen to today after we hang up and finish this because I haven't listened to
sonically,
that.
Ozzy's voice on that,
Hmm.
it's top notch, in my opinion.
Right. All right. That's what I'm going to listen to today. But now here, this is one of the things I find so interesting. So we were talking about Ozzy's unique voice, and certainly nobody's ever going to mistake him for Robert Plant type singer, right? I mean, he's not in that type of guy.
Or Barry Manilow.
Or Barry Manilow, exactly.
Yeah.
But two of his most popular songs and successful songs on the charts, Mama, I'm Coming Home, a ballad, and his song that he did with Lita Ford, Close My Eyes Forever, also a ballad. So who would have thought that the friggin' Prince of Darkness, the guy who's known for all these hard rock songs, would have two of his most successful songs being ballads? It just that blows my mind. And the fact that one of those ballads was written with friggin' Lemmy. Just there's nothing about that that
True.
makes sense other than again, that's just something that Ozzy always brought to the table. I mean, you were
Hmm.
just kind of mocking it, and we always used to do that, the vocal of Close My Eyes Forever. But if you put Robert Plant on that song, yes, it's a better voice and it might sound better, but it has a whole different feel. I need Ozzy's close your. It's like there's just something
Now,
about that.
now, didn't I'm confused? I thought to what you said, didn't Lemmy co-write that?
He co-wrote "Mama, I'm Coming Home" and a couple of other songs on the No More
Oh, it
Tears
wasn't Close
album.
Your Eyes Forever.
No,
Okay, all
no,
right. Because I'm looking at the credits, it says Ozzy and Lita
and Lita
Ford
Ford, right?
songwriting,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
which again, I think that's a Sharon Osbourne. If you want Ozzy on this, he gets a co-write.
Possibly, but again, did he come in and did he say, you know what the end of this song needs?
Possibly.
Close your. Maybe he did. Who knows? I certainly don't doubt that Lita was the
By the way,
one
I
driving the
could I,
music.
by the way, I could listen to you do that all day long.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, that's my poor imitation of Ozzy. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's where look, people have always said he's not the quote unquote songwriter, but he's a melody writer. So did he hum a melody and then Lita Ford wrote the lyrics? Off the top of my head, I do not know that. I don't know. But my
Hmm.
point just being two of Ozzy's most successful songs on the charts, at least here in the US, are both ballads. That just blows my mind.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Absolutely.
look, I'm thankful I got to see both Ozzy and Sabbath. Ozzy multiple times. Ozzy, my second concert ever, second artist I was ever into big time. Got to meet him a couple of years ago. Got my original Blizzard of Oz album that I owned when I was 11 years old signed. And you look at it's all beat up. I mean, this if you're looking for a mint condition copy, this is like the furthest away from it. And probably if people
Mm.
looked at it, they're like, why did you get that signed? It's in such bad condition because it's mine from my childhood. And that's what that album meant to me. And my Diary of a
Yeah.
Madman album, same thing, poor condition. But I had Ozzy sign both of those. Why? Because that's just such a piece of my childhood, those two albums.
Yeah.
And really, like I said, my gateway into the music that I've loved now for 40 years. And yeah, to get to meet Ozzy and to get him to sign my actual copies I owned as 11, 12-year-old kid was priceless to me. So look, this one, when I heard the news, hit me in a similar way when I heard Eddie Van Halen passed away. Like that's the kind of it, like, wow, oh my God. And I was like, this one for me might feel worse because for me, Ozzy was my guy for years. He was the one, he introduced me to so many other bands. And it's crazy. Crazy. Just 3 weeks ago he performed and now he's gone. That's freaking I'm stunned over this. Absolutely stunned.
Yeah. Yeah. You and me both.
I'm sure we will disconnect and I'll think of 50,000 other things that I could have brought up and mentioned. But like we said, we're recording this. This news is well, from the time we started recording, not even an hour old. So
Hmm.
we always say when we lose somebody, obviously it's sad, but we're thankful we've got the music, we've got the memories, and I'm gonna go back and listen to Tribute, an album I haven't listened to in a handful of years, certainly. So that's gonna be my listen for the afternoon. I encourage everybody else, take out your Sabbath albums, take out your Ozzy albums, give them a listen, not just today. Spend a few days, maybe a few weeks with these, because that Ozzy deserves that. And we lost an icon today, is the only way I could say it. We lost a legend.
And also to his family, to his
Yes,
wife and his kids, we wish our best to them at this
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely, yes. And you know what I'll say when I met Ozzy that day, I met his wife, his son, and his daughter, and all three of them were super nice. And yes, I understand that this is a meet and greet of pay, but I've met people in situations like this where they were far from pleasant. And all three, Sharon actually spoke with my son and I for 10 minutes, probably 5, 10 minutes. I can't remember all the details of it, but she was not rushing us. So she was just so polite and friendly, opposite of what I expected. I expected her to be rough around the edges and maybe a little rude, and it was anything but that. It was such a great
Mm.
experience. So I'm glad you definitely remember to our condolences to the family, our condolences to the fans around the world, and to everybody who worked and played with him and knew him. I mean, like I said, it was not even an hour ago when we started recording. I already saw the outpouring of love on the internet, and I'm sure when we disconnect here, there'll be 100 other posts or 1,000 other posts, in the next hour or two from everybody. Just like you said before, everybody just seemed to love Ozzy. He was just that guy. And I'll say this: I remember reading recently that Ozzy's son said to Ozzy, "Hey, when everybody's watching the Osbournes, do you think people are laughing at you or with you?" And Ozzy's like, "I don't care as long as they're laughing and they're happy. That's all
Mm,
that matters."
yeah,
That really sums it up perfectly. And that's probably why everybody who knew Ozzy loved him so much. He was just looking to have fun and have a good time. And at the end of the day, that's what life should all be about.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
All right, buddy. Well, we hadn't had to do one of these for a few years, and I was thankful for that. Let's hope we don't have to do another one anytime soon. Everybody out there, share your memories, your thoughts, your comments. What Ozzy albums, songs mean the most to you? When did you get into Ozzy? When did you get into Sabbath? Just share some of your memories about Ozzy and what he's meant to you in your musical journey, because that's what I think we all take from all of this is just that luck that we
Absolutely.
that we were able to kind of experience all those records. So, all right, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Vin, I appreciate you jumping on at a moment's notice
No
here.
problem.
And to everybody, oh yeah, do the Ozzy clap out. All righty, there you have it. Once more, thank you, Ozzy, for all the great memories over the last 50 plus years. I know I'll be rocking out all of your music for decades to come. Thank you so much. My condolences to your wife, your kids, and everyone else around the world who was an Ozzy fan or was impacted by your music. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and rest in peace, Ozzy.